Welcome to the Equinety Podcast, where horse owners just like you share their incredible Equinety stories and how Equinety is changing their horses' lives. Whether you're searching for something to give your performance horse better focus, faster recovery, and more stamina, or in the extreme case where all hope seems lost, give your horse what it needs to help heal at a cellular level, you'll find it here. So jump in on today's episode to hear how Equinety is helping horses worldwide. Now, welcome your host, John Dowdy.
Hello and welcome to this week's Equinety Podcast. We are swinging up into Kentucky. We've got Cheyenne Dykes on the call this week. Cheyenne, welcome to the Equinety Podcast.
Thank you, John. I am excited to be here and share my stories about Equinety and all of the success I've had with my horses and the improvements that I've seen with them.
Absolutely. And as always, we're just very excited to have people on every week and sharing their stories. And what had really excited me about this one, we're going to talk about 7 horses in this one. And we're talking everything from 3 to 4 year olds to senior horses. We've got how the Equinety Horse XL has helped with arthritis, laminitis, abscesses, muscle tone, fewer injections, hard keeper, nervous horse, laminitis, non-sweater, and the list goes on. All from this one little tiny scoop. So let's get into this. Now, you've got a training and boarding facility. Give us a little bit of your background. You're in the reining horses and ranch riding. Tell us a little bit about how all this came to be.
So I started out in the reining. Growing up, I kind of did a little bit of everything, but I got into the reining world, and it kind of just sparked my interest and really caught my attention, and I had more fun doing it than I did any of the other disciplines that I did. And so I have worked for a couple of professional trainers along the way that have kind of helped mold me into where I am today. But it's just, for me, the excitement of it and the precision of being able to do the maneuvers quickly and controlled really is what kind of got me into it. And then it transitions over a little bit into the ranch riding. A lot of the ranch riding is kind of similar to the reining, but it's just not as precise and demanding as the reining is, I would say. And you have a little bit more fun with it, like dragging logs and going over trot poles and stuff like that. And it's a lot of transitioning from different gaits through the pattern and stuff like that. But you find a lot of reiners that go into the ranch riding because it's kind of good to take them in the pen and do something else with them rather than just the reining patterns. And because it goes hand in hand with each other pretty well, the reiners really have an easy time transitioning over into the ranch riding.
Sure. So with you having, being around horses all the time and with your boarding facility and then you also have a pretty heavy schedule in training. So I appreciate you taking the time out of all that to squeeze in this podcast. I know there's going to be a lot of really great benefit and, just with these stories. And again, we're talking everywhere from 3 and 4 year old horses up into late 20s. What was it about the Equinety Horse XL that caught your attention to begin with?
So one of the horses that really got me into it was my older horse, Rebel, that is 27. And I was kind of at the point where I was having to decide if it was time to let him cross over the Rainbow Bridge, because we were trying all kinds of things to get him back to good health without any success. And so I just was lucky enough that my neighbor at the time had just started using Equinety, and she knows that I'm a horse crazy person and I would do about anything for my horses. So she said, "Hey, let me give you this sample and just try it, and if you don't like it, I'm not trying to get you to buy it just because I'm selling it, but if you don't like it, no harm, no foul, but let me just give you the sample and try it on one of them and see if you notice a difference, and then, we can talk about it." And I was like, okay. So I took it. I mean, at this point I was willing to do, whatever I needed to do. And I started him on it. And by the time that I was done with that sample, I noticed a huge difference in him. He was one that was a real hard keeper. He has little to no teeth left. And so we were having a hard time putting any kind of weight on him. And you could tell that he wasn't feeling great because he was lacking in the calories and stuff like that, that he was a little bit lethargic and just not feeling his best. But with the Equinety, I mean, he put on more weight than he did even when he was a younger horse and I was riding him. I've had the horse since he was 4, and he's always been a hard keeper, and a little bit more on the slender side. But now he is out in the field with a couple other older horses. He's on grass. Obviously, with losing the teeth, he doesn't get much grass. But I feed him his 2 scoops of grain with the Equinety in the morning time. And we put free choice of rice bran and soybean meal out for them. And that's all he eats. And he is so full figured and even just muscle tone for a horse that just does nothing but stand in the field. He looks way better at 27 than he ever did when he was a 4-year-old.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, for those who are tuning in, the Equinety Horse XL, and I'll get more into this a little bit later, it's 100% pure amino acids, and it doesn't really fit into a specific supplement category. And in this case, it's not a, quote, weight gain product. So when you describe what happened with this horse and how it gained this weight and muscle, explain exactly what you mean by that, because it's not a weight gain product. But see if you can describe that just a little bit for those that might be concerned. Oh, I don't need my horse to gain any more weight.
Yeah. I mean, he's not obese by any means, but I would say from my standpoint on the way that I like a horse to look, he was very thin. You could see his ribs, you could see his hip bones, and he just was not full figured. He was real narrow throughout his whole body because he didn't have a lot of fat and he didn't have a lot of muscle. And since he's on the Equinety, he to me looks like a performance horse now. He doesn't have a big hay belly on him. He's not super round or anything like that, but he's full figure.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see his ribs anymore. You can't see the hip bones. He just looks like a healthy horse that would be able to withstand performance of some sort, the riding, 5 days a week and that kind of thing, but not obese by any means.
Sure.
He really, I mean, we were free feeding him, sweet feed, safe choice, alfalfa pellets, alfalfa cubes, bran mashes, and nothing was putting any kind of weight on him. He looked the same through it all. And since he's been on the Equinety, I mean, he gets 2 scoops of grain in the morning only. And he gets that rice bran and the soybean, and he looks like a horse that you could get on and ride and exercise, and he'd be able to withstand it, no problem. He's fit. But for me, I say that he's fat just because he wasn't, in my opinion, pretty skinny for a while.
Yeah. And you also mentioned the fact that he's arthritic, being 27 years old.
Yes.
And how does he move around out there? Is he running around or having fun?
Yes. Yeah, he runs around and has fun. My husband always says all the time, man, we shouldn't have gave him that, because my husband works dogs and he'll go out in the field. The sheep live out there too, to work dogs, and they'll sometimes get rambunctious and bust through the gate when he's open it and take a little joyride around the property. And he never even dreamed about doing that before. So
that's pretty funny.
He's definitely feeling a lot better.
Yeah, that is pretty awesome. All right, so now he was 27. Let's go to a 4-year-old, Loretta. What was going on with her? And tell us about her.
So she had 2 things that were going on with her. One was she had horrible feet. She didn't have real good hoof growth. She didn't have very strong feet. And my husband, being a farrier, said, let's go ahead and put her on the Equinety, because I've heard that it's had some good success with that. And so we started her on that. And by her second shoeing cycle, she had completely changed the hoof growth. that we had been seeing from her. She's got real light hooves, so they've always been brittle, and her sire had horrible feet himself. So it really just helped to strengthen everything up, and we were having a little bit of difficulty keeping shoes on her, just with the nails holding into the foot. And since she's been on the Equinety, we haven't had any trouble with that, and she's growing just a lot stronger, healthier hoof than she was before she was on it.
Yeah, that's great. Now, one of the other things that you had mentioned to me, she was a really nervous horse.
Yes. So I would say you would think of your normal anxious horse and multiply that by 10, and that would be what you got with her. She was just anxious in the stall, anxious hauling in the trailer, really anxious at the horse shows, one of those ones that kind of would just walk a hole in the middle of her stall. She never really could stand still, and we had tried a couple other actual calming supplements with little to no luck off of that. And I didn't even start her on the Equinety with the intention of trying to use it as a calming supplement. Mainly, the main reason was because of her hoof growth. And I noticed within a month a big change in her just overall demeanor in the stall, in the cross ties. She was not as worried. She would actually stand still and be relaxed, and was able to take the riding and the training a lot better because she wasn't always trying to be one step ahead, guessing what was going on. She just kind of would trust in the moment and let me show her the way that I wanted her to be, rather than being so worked up that she was always trying to be one step ahead and get it done the right way before it was asked for. So that really made me excited about that, because I've used a lot of different calming supplements, and like I said, most of the time they maybe might do a little bit, but they don't really work. And she's been on the Equinety now for about a year, and I haven't seen any change in her. It has kept her, at this more level, chilled out spot, rather than just helping her for a little bit and then her kind of falling back into the same pattern.
Sure.
So I've been real happy with that.
Yes. Now, going back to Rebel, who's 27, and Loretta, who's 4, how quickly did you notice a change when you started giving the product?
I would say within a couple of weeks, I definitely started to notice that the horses are feeling better and moving better and stuff like that. But after a full month was when I really was like, man, this stuff is really working. But I've also had a couple of horses that in days, I've been like, wow, that's really doing something and making a difference for them.
Right. And, with so much stuff that you've talked about just with 2 horses, and we've got five more, for those of you who are tuning in, maybe you have just come across the Equinety Horse XL. We actually have 2 products. So Equinety Horse XL, which is what we're talking all about on this podcast. The other product we have is a Equinety Ultimate OEC, which is a flaxseed-based omega-3. It's got 1,000 IUs of natural vitamin E and colloidal silver all in one. But all of these horses were just given the Equinety Horse XL, which is 100% pure amino acids. Serving size is 5.2 grams, and which is about like a teaspoon. And there's no fillers, no sugars, no starches, and there's no loading dose. And as I mentioned before, it doesn't fit into a specific supplement category. In other words, it's not, quote, a hoof supplement or weight gain or calmer or any of these things. What it's specifically designed to do, and what makes it so unique, is it's giving the body what it needs to release its own hormones. And when we can do that, allow the horse to release its own hormones, then it's the horse's body that sends its own hormones to its own problem areas. And one of the things I really like about a podcast like this, where we're going to talk about 7 different horses, different ages, all kinds of different problems, and all you've done is just given them this one product, and it's, in essence, it's customizing to each horse's needs, because again, we're allowing the horse to help repair itself from the inside out. So it takes out a lot of guesswork, and it's super easy. It starts working within hours. And as you mentioned, you've noticed some changes within days, which is very common.
Yes.
A lot of people see changes within the couple week mark, but I would say the vast majority, and I'm talking upper 90 percentile, do see changes in 30 days or less. Now, with that being said, sometimes it does take longer, 3, 4, 5 months. But the vast majority is very, very quick. Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about the third horse here, Pedro, who's 3 years old.
So Pedro is one of my futurity horses for this year. And the biggest thing we kind of started him on it for was he started to get laminitic on me. And we tried everything. We switched his diet completely, put him on a different grain, changed up his hay, did all this stuff to try to balance him out with little to no luck. And so we went ahead and started him on the Equinety. And I would say it was probably 4 or 5 days. He had a pretty strong pulse in the beginning part of it. And he was pretty ouchy on his front feet. And within 4 to 5 days, the pulse was completely gone. And he was starting to get more comfortable walking around on those front feet. And within 2 weeks, he was completely back to normal. We didn't have any more issues with it. No more pulse, no more heat, no soreness. I mean, it just balanced him out and got everything going back the way it needed to be. And we were actually able to change his diet back to pretty similar to what we had him on before, and still stayed out of not having any trouble from him at all.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Now, you had mentioned that your husband is a farrier. What has been his take? I'm sure he's seen a lot of hoof issues through the years. So what's been his take from such a fast turnaround?
So Equinety is his best friend. He never was one to really push any kind of hoof supplements or anything like that, just because he really never truly believed in it enough to recommend people to use it. And since we've been married, he's never, until Equinety, recommended supplements to any of his customers. But once he's seen the results that we were having out of our horses, he started to tell people about it. And he'd have horses that were laminitic, or horses that just didn't have good hoof growth, had a lot of separation, stuff like that. And the first thing that he would tell people was, you need to put this horse on Equinety, or have a horse that, maybe didn't have horrible hooves, but when he would shoe them, they would be kind of a little bit sore for the next couple of days. And so you'd have to ride them a little bit lighter. And he would say, hey, I really think that you should get some of this Equinety and try it. I've had great success with it. I haven't recommended it to somebody that hasn't continued to buy it again after their first tub, because they're seeing the results and they're liking what is happening with their horses since they've been on it. And so it's his go-to thing, especially if he has one that has not great feet. He recommends it because if the horse has better hoof growth and has better feet, then it makes his life a lot easier to be underneath him. So
yeah, absolutely. I tell people that all the time. You could have the best farrier on the planet, but if there's nothing to work with, what's anybody supposed to do? So, in regards to hoof growth and overall health of the hoof and thicker sole depth and everything that the farrier needs, this is going to help get your horse there quicker, which gives the farrier more to work with in a shorter amount of time.
Exactly. And then it also keeps you out of having to, maybe do some extra type of corrective shoeing or stuff like that to keep the horse comfortable, just because their body is correcting itself and growing a healthier, stronger hoof.
Yep.
So kind of saves you a little bit money in the long run without having to pay for all the extra stuff that you might need to keep the horse going longer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the other things that we hear a lot from farriers, one thing that they really like about the product, and sometimes it might not be so much the hoof itself, but the dangers of maybe that horse has a lot of arthritis, or it's very dangerous just to lift the leg to work on the hoof.
Yep.
And when they start taking the product, a lot of times the horse just lifts his leg like no problems whatsoever. So it's a lot safer
Yeah.
in the long run too.
Yes, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the fourth one here, who was a non-sweater.
So that would be Ozzy. He is one of my lesson horses. He is 19 years old. And I get a lot of compliments on that from him since he's been on the Equinety, that people, when they hear his age, they go, "What? That horse is that old?" Because, I mean, he doesn't look a day over 8. But we had some warm weather here, and then we got real cold, and then we got hot again. And the second time when we got hot, he just quit sweating the way he was supposed to. He would still sweat, but he wouldn't sweat until we put him in the cross ties, like after we were done exercising him. And then he would just all of a sudden be overly sweaty. And so I just thought, I'm going to try the Equinety because I have it for my other horses. And I'm going to go ahead and just put him on that and see if maybe it helps him up before I try any other kind of supplement. And within 2 days, 2 doses, he started sweating completely normal when we were exercising him, and we haven't looked back since then. We haven't had a single issue with it since that. But that really kind of surprised me because honestly, I was thinking maybe about a weekend he might start sweating a little bit more, but just after 2 doses of it, he went back to sweating completely normal, like he never used to be.
Yeah, that. Here in Florida, the non-sweaters seems to be a big issue. And I would say in most cases, adding the product really helps. It hasn't worked in every single scenario, but more times than not. And, again, the Horse XL and these products, it's not a miracle supplement, although I will say it has done some pretty miraculous things. I mean, as we go through this list, it's just such a smorgasbord of issues and different ages and all with one little tiny scoop. So,
yes. And that's what really got me to believe in it so much and stand behind it like I do, because I've had it help with a variety of issues, not just one. And as a trainer that, runs also a boarding facility, I love nothing more than not having to have 50 different supplements in my feed room. Because it just, it takes up space. It takes more time to get through feeding when you're having to go through all this extra stuff. And I feed Equinety, and that's it. I don't feed any other kind of joint supplements or anything like that. And it's nice because you go in the feed room and you're not overcome with all these supplement tubs, because I have one that has, luckily for me, helped me with my horses in every kind of different situation.
Hey, you don't feel like a chef. It's just like an instant oatmeal kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to Smokey, who's 28.
So Smokey is my husband's old rope horse. He's had him since he was a yearling. And up until 3 years ago, he had only lived in California, which is totally different climate than what it is out here on this side of the world. And so when we moved him from California out here, we try to acclimate him, from the inside the barn to outside, because he was ultimately going to be out in pasture with my other older horse. And very quickly after he moved, we noticed that it was pretty rough on him, just the change in climate and stuff, and it had the highest impact in his feet. We started to see abscesses coming out of all 4 feet, from the bottom, straight out from the middle, up at the cornet band. And I'm not talking just like one every now and then. I mean, he had multiple drainage spots out of all 4 feet.
Oh my goodness.
At the same time. So we were actually really struggling with, should we continue to try to treat this, or should we just, put him down? Because he was having a hard time getting around. He wasn't comfortable, and we were trying all kinds of different antibiotics. I have a TheraPlate. I was putting him on the TheraPlate. We put him back into a stall. We did all kinds of things trying to get him comfortable. And we started him on the Equinety, and within 2 weeks, all of his abscesses were drying up, and he was starting to get sound and comfortable again. And he's been on it since then. And like I said, that was 3 years ago, and he has lived in the pasture full time since then, and he has not had one abscess to date. And we used to actually have to keep him shod all the way around, and he is barefoot in the pasture with no issues whatsoever.
Well, that is another incredible story. And, you know, as I'm listening to these different ones, you know, from somebody that might just be hearing about the product for the first time, they could be thinking, well, yeah, that could just be a fluke. You know, once you got acclimated into this temperature, and it's like, okay, let's call Smokey's experience a fluke. But what about the other four?
Yes, exactly.
or what about the other 6 we're going to be talking about, you know? So,
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to a 4-year-old by the name of Big Bird.
So Big Bird got his name because he's a rather big boy. And we had bought him to be a rope horse for my dad. But when we got him, he was pretty underweight. You could see all of his ribs. You could see his hip bones. He's about 16 hands tall. So, he was pretty thin for as big as he was. He had absolutely no muscle tone. His top line was very poor. No hip, no shoulder. And I just figured, you know, I have the Equinety. I've liked what I've seen on the other horses. Let me go ahead and put him on it. And within 2 weeks, he was starting to feel out and really start to get that muscle tone back and start to put some of the weight back on and filling in. And I've had him for about a month now, and he's been on the Equinety. And if I showed you the picture of him when I brought him home and the picture of him now, besides his color, you wouldn't think that he was the same horse, because he has just completely blossomed into what I would say a performance horse should look like. And his muscle tone has gotten better, and even riding wise, because I started riding him about a week after we brought him home. I could just tell that he is stronger. He has more drive. He has more stamina. And he's just overall feeling better. And I definitely say that the Equinety is the number one reason for that, because I have had horses before that have been thinner, not looked quite the way that I wanted to, and I've had to pack the feed to them, and it has taken a few months before the horse really started to look the way that I wanted it to look. But like I said, within 2 weeks, he was starting to already fill out and get that muscle tone back, and within a month, you do not believe the way he looked a month ago. And I haven't had to feed him quite as much as I would have in the past. And now that I have him where I want him at, he's down to 3/4 of a scoop in the morning and at night, and grass hay morning and night. And he has kept the weight on, kept the muscle on, and we're not looking back. So,
yeah. And I think too, one of the best descriptions I think I hear most often is just by giving this one product, the Equinety Horse XL, it just helps balance the horse from the inside out.
yes.
You know, there's been some folks that have said, oh, I started giving this product to my horse and it made my horse fat. Well, as you dig deeper into that, you know, again, this is not a quote weight gain supplement. We're just helping the horse to balance itself from the inside out. So what we found is the people were typically just overfeeding their horse at that point, because as you were just describing, you know, you're not having to feed as much, and it was able to add the weight, the muscle where it needs to be. And then now it's just maintaining.
Yep. I mean, and people, I mean, you can make your horse fat, you know, if it's an easy keeper, just by feeding it too much without the Equinety, you know. So
right.
I haven't had trouble, even with my horses that are on it that are easy keepers. I haven't had trouble with them, you know, becoming obese or putting too much weight on. But that goes back to what you were saying, is I feed them appropriately for what they need. It doesn't have to do with the Equinety. It's just the ones that I have noticed that have been harder to put the weight on. Feeding them the Equinety along with the other stuff has just helped them to get to where I want them to be a lot quicker.
Yeah, I think yes, that's really well put because, again, this isn't the magic powder although we will have some pushback on that because based on your,
yes,
some people do,
yes.
I need some of that magic powder. But, what we always recommend, first of all, there's not any negative side effects with this product. It's 100% pure amino acids. So we recommend not changing a thing you're doing with your horse. Just add this to it. And then over the next couple days to couple weeks, and most of the time within 30 days, you should see enough of a change to decide whether to reduce or stop using other things. And again, your horse better than anyone. Of course, we always recommend to consult, with your vet, your medical team, and your farrier and all that kind of stuff. It's just, as you just said, this really helps get your horse back to where you want them to be quicker, and safer,
Yep.
So, all right, let's talk about the last horse here, a 3-year-old named Daisy.
So that one was another one that was supposed to be my futurity horse for this year. She's one that my husband and I own personally. She got about 2 months ago. I turned her out in the morning like I normally do and brought her in and was going to ride her and got on her, was riding around. Everything was fine. About 15 minutes in, all of a sudden she goes 3-legged lame. And I wasn't doing anything hard. I was just loping her around and she just took one bad step. And I thought maybe, okay, well, maybe she stung herself because I've been riding her and everything's been fine. I get off, I unwrap her legs, I look everything over. I see nothing wrong. She has no pulse, nothing's going on. But she's still, at this point, she's pretty lame. So I take her in and undo her and we look at her and I have a vet come out the next day and look over her and she decides that, we have a pretty bad abscess. And so we go with soaking and packing the hoof and all that kind of stuff, every day, hand walking, and we're a week in and nothing has changed. So I have them come back out and look and same thing saying, oh, it's just an abscess. It's just really deep in there. Keep it up. So I took her for a second opinion, to another vet that looked at her and said that, he didn't think there was an abscess in there. But there was definitely something off. She had never been injected or anything like that before. So we went ahead and injected the foot, and gave that a try. And that did help a little bit, but I put her back to work and within another week, I had 2 swollen front legs and I had a horse that was lame again. So I went back to the vet and they recommended that we do an MRI. And so I took her up to Root and Riddle, had the MRI done, and it turns out, even though she was only showing lameness in one foot, she had torn her suspensory by her sesamoids in both front legs.
Oh, boy.
And so that was kind of a little bit of a devastating blow. And I brought her home. We decided we were going to do stem cell injections. So I brought her home with that plan. And then I already had her on the Equinety, but just 1 scoop in the morning. And I decided to add her for a second scoop in the afternoon as well. And she's been on that for about 2 months now, but within the first couple of weeks of the 2 doses, the swelling in the front legs went away, the heat went away, and she's 100% sound. Now I know that I got to give her a little bit more time off, but if you just seen her, you wouldn't know that she has 2 pretty decent sized tears in both front legs because she has no swelling, she has no lameness, she has no heat. And the only thing that I changed was putting her on that second scoop of Equinety.
Wow. And you know what, even if it's in the combination with everything else, right now in 2 months, now what's the recommended time off for her?
6 months is the recommended time off.
Yep. And one of the really neat things with this product, and a lot of people say, well, should I give 1 scoop or 2 scoops? So the science behind that is when you give a scoop in the morning, as an example, within hours, it goes right to work. It's absorbed and the hormones are released from the pituitary. And those hormones have a 23.5-hour life cycle. So by the time you give a scoop the following morning, the hormone levels are back to where they would normally be for that age of a horse. And so what we have a lot of people, whether it be in the performance horse world for, looking for the fast recovery in that manner, or in this case where we're dealing with an injured horse, to give a scoop in the morning and a scoop in the evening, what we're allowing the body to do is release the hormones, twice a day. So it's helping to keep them elevated, which that is going to promote the faster repair. So being on the market for 7 years and all of the stories that we've heard with injured horses and whatever the vet's time frame is, it's typically always sooner, which we just hear that all the time. But that's the difference between 1 scoop and 2 scoops. So, but we have a lot of people that do it just in their performance horse world that really helps with the faster recovery in that manner as well.
Yeah. I've been nothing but happy with it. Like I said, I've had multiple horses on it for multiple reasons, and I have been pleased with the results I've seen with every single horse.
Yeah, that is absolutely great. Well, I tell you, we are pushing over 35 minutes here, which is awesome. So we got a lot of great information out here for folks who are looking to possibly help their horses well, and hopefully they'll give the Equinety Horse XL a try. So before we part, is there anything else you'd like to say to anybody that's tuning in or anybody that might be on the fence about trying this stuff?
If you can't decide if you want to try it or not, just try it. It's not super expensive, and I would almost guarantee you that you're going to see an improvement in your horse. And it's going to help you get that horse where you want it to be. A lot of people might be like me, kind of already been trying all kinds of stuff. And the Equinety was my last stop. I haven't had to go on and try more supplements and see, is this going to help me? Is this going to help me? The Equinety was my last stop on that supplement search. So if you're really just on the fence about it, just give it a try, because you're going to be happy with the results that you see.
Yeah, that is great. Well, Cheyenne Dykes out of Kentucky, thank you so much for taking the time to share all your stories here on the Equinety Podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
That's all for this episode of the Equinety Podcast. For more information on purchasing Equinety, be sure to visit our website at teamequinety.com, where you'll also find product information as well as more testimonials on how others have seen amazing results by implementing Equinety into their horse's supplement regime. We'll have more stories on how Equinety is helping horses worldwide right here on a future episode of the Equinety Podcast.